Today, in fact, just a short while ago, the Security Council adopted unanimously a resolution establishing a new mission in Haiti called Mission for Justice Support in Haiti, or in a new acronym born today, MINUJUST. This smaller peacekeeping mission will have a concentrated focus on the rule of law and police development. It will be composed of up to 7 foreign police units, about 980 people, and 295 individual police officers, plus civilian staff. MINUSTA is to close in 6 months, the current mission that is, with a gradual military drawdown to be completed by October 15th, 2017. The Council is also discussing currently about the sanctions on Somalia and Eritrea. And yesterday afternoon, Said Djinnit, the Special Envoy for the Secretary General for the Great Lakes, also briefed the Security Council, highlighting some progress on the implementation of the peace and security framework in the region, and that was following the vote on the Syria resolution. Mr. Djinnit also encouraged leaders in the region to remain committed in assisting Burundi, the Central African Republic, the DRC, South Sudan, to address persisting crises in these countries. Now I have an update on Cameroon. The Special Representative Secretary General for Central Africa, Lonseni Fall, just concluded a 3-day visit to Cameroon. It was his 4th since November of last year, and the 2nd focused on the situation in the northwest and the southwest regions of the country. During his visit, he met with government officials, civil society, opposition leaders, detained representatives from the Anglophone movement and their lawyers, representatives of the international community and the UN system. Mr. Fall reiterated the UN's call to all parties to address the current situation through peaceful and legal means. He welcomed the government's announced intentions to restore internet services in Bamenda for hospitals, universities, and banks as part of a package of measures announced on March 30th by the Minister of Justice. He encouraged the government to consider additional confidence-building measures to appease tensions, including the release of the Anglophone leaders and the full restoration of internet services in the 2 regions. Mr. Fall also called on the leaders of the Anglophone movement to engage with the government in a constructive manner to find a consensual and lasting solution to the situations in the southwest and northwest regions. Mr. Lonseni Fall reaffirmed the willingness of the UN to continue to accompany the 2 parties in their dialogue efforts. Mr. Fall will return to Cameroon on the occasion of the 44th ministerial meeting of the UN Standing Advisory Committee on Security Questions in Central Africa, and that's at the end of May, beginning of June of this year. Meanwhile, from Iraq, the UN Settlements Program, otherwise known as UN Habitat, says that extensive damage has occurred in western Mosul, with more than 1,000 homes having been destroyed. The humanitarian coordinator for the UN in Iraq, Lise Grande, says the level of damage in western Mosul is already far greater than in the east, even before the battle to retake the old city begins. With nearly 300,000 civilians having fled western Mosul, Ms. Grande warned that hundreds of thousands more may flee in the days and weeks ahead. With homes being destroyed, schools and health centers sustaining damage, and electricity and water stations in ruin, Ms. Grande stressed that under international humanitarian law, parties to the conflict are obliged to do everything possible to protect civilians and limit damage to civilian infrastructure. And countries are not increasing spending fast enough to meet the water and sanitation targets under the Sustainable Development Goals. That's according to a new report published by the World Health Organization. Universal access to safe drinking water and sanitation will not be achieved unless steps are taken to use financial resources more efficiently and increase efforts to identify new resources of funding. 80% of countries report that water, sanitation, and hygiene financing is still insufficient to meet nationally defined goals. More information online. And I wanted to flag the adoption today of a new and interesting global standard to ensure safer international trade in plants and seeds. In this globalized world, food and agricultural products are continuously on the move, with ships ferrying every year more than 500 million large steel containers filled with all kinds of cargo. The standard adopted today in the Republic of Korea by the Commission on phytosanitary measures, aims to ensure that all shipments, big and small, are free from bugs and diseases, and to address the threat of pest transmission posed by seeds. More information on the website of our colleagues at FAO. And I just want to flag a couple of answers of questions we've been asked offline. One is further questions on the execution last week of 3 men in Gaza. And I can say that we condemn the execution of 3 men by Hamas in Gaza, and we reiterate the Secretariat's opposition to the death penalty in all circumstances. Furthermore, the death penalty carried out in the absence of fair trial and the required approval of the Palestinian president or in violation of Palestinian and international law. We urge the authorities in Gaza to immediately cease the practice of capital punishment and to uphold their obligation under international and national law. And also I was asked about Ethiopia and Eritrea and the Boundary Commission anniversary. I can tell you that we are aware that today marks the 15 years since the Eritrea-Ethiopia Boundary Commission reached its ruling on the delimitation of the border between the two countries. We regret that the ruling, made in line with the Algiers peace agreement signed in 2000, has yet to be implemented, and that relations between Ethiopia and Eritrea have yet to normalize. We would underscore the importance of finding a peaceful solution to conflicts affecting the Horn of Africa and fully implement the agreement to that end. We also call on both Eritrea and Ethiopia to implement the ruling of the Ethiopia-Eritrea Claims Commission reached in 2009 and work towards laying the foundation of a comprehensive and lasting peace with the support and assistance of the UN and other international partners. And just a couple of notes for the week ahead. We told you yesterday about the visit of UN's interagency emergency directors to South Sudan and Somalia. We are now told they will be here to brief you on Tuesday, 18 April, and not on Monday. And as you know, the UN headquarters will be closed tomorrow in commemoration of Good Friday. We will not have a briefing. The office will be closed. We'll be back here on Monday. And wish all of you who celebrate Easter a happy Easter. And if you don't, enjoy the day off. And also just want to say thank you to BRUNEI, DARUSSALAM, Germany, and Montenegro who joined the honor roll. And that brings us up to... Luke, if you have a question, you cede the floor. Nizar and then Matthew.
Yeah, I think you heard probably these reports about hundreds of civilians killed near Deir Zur in an airstrike to a Daesh chemical depot. Do you have any comment on that or any suggestion of investigating this incident?
No, I don't have anything on that. We're obviously looking into it. If I have something, I will share with you.
Staying on chemical, Dr. Theodore Postel from MIT said that what happened in Khan Sheikhoun is totally fabrication. Dr. Postel said that it cannot have happened by aerial bombardment. Also, do you have? He's from MIT and he was on television about that.
I don't know who this gentleman is. What I can tell you, and what is important, is that there is an investigation, as we've said here. Our colleagues at the OPCW, through their fact-finding mechanism, have started to do their work. It's important that the facts be found out. I think the pictures that we've seen on TV, I think were heartbreaking, to say the least. And I will leave it at that. And I think we've
allegations by Swedish doctor organization saying that the white helmets were killing children by injecting them with adrenaline in the heart. When in such cases, when there is sarin, they should not even touch them.
I think there are a lot of things being said. What I have no comment on. I haven't seen those particular comments. I think we've seen, and I'm not going to start commenting on certain medical procedures that may or may not have taken. What I do know is that the people who need to be honored are the Syrian humanitarian workers who across the country have put their lives on the line to try to save as many civilians as possible.
On the same subject, will the investigators go to Khan Sheikhoun?
The fact-finding mechanism is run by the OPCW. They will try to gather as much information as they can, and I would urge you to be in touch with them, with the OPCW in The Hague. I can give you their contact. Mr. Lee.
Sure. I wanted to ask about this, what you came back with on Cameroon. I have a couple of questions. One is, can you confirm that the Secretary General sought to speak with Paul Biya while he was on an extended stay in Geneva, as has been reported? And I also, go ahead. You will.
I have no confirmation of a call having taken place.
I mean, I'm not asking if he reached him. I'm asking, did he try to reach him?
I have no information.
Okay. And I wanted to know, people there are saying, even in the wake of the visit of Lansani Fall, that, for example, a Supreme Court Justice, Paul Aya, was only today, remanded to remain in prison. So they're not seeing much changes. And I'm wondering, is this something that Mr. Lansani Fall looked into while he was there, the continued detention of barristers and those who have advocated for fair treatment?
Well, I think what I just said is, in fact, that in his contacts with the government, Mr. Lansani Fall advocated for the release of a number of Anglophone leaders and others. So I think that's clear. That's one of the things he was advocating for.
And finally, I wanted to ask you about the resident coordinator position. Given that the previous resident coordinator didn't raise any of the issues that you've just mentioned while she was there, is there any progress on naming?
I don't know that, and I don't know if you know that. But okay, anyway, next.
The people that are there
question?
Say, and she also blocks the press that's
I think she blocks you, but
yeah,
that's her right.
In what capacity does she block it?
Well, I think anyone who has seen your tweets, I think sometimes they do cross the line, I think, into harassment, and people block you from time to time. Indeed.
Excellent. I have another question. Sexual abuse. I wanted to ask you, today in the Security Council, yesterday you'd said that of sexual abuse in Haiti, this might be harassment too, so please get ready.
I'm paid to be harassed, so that's okay.
Of child sex ring run by the UN in Haiti by Haitian peacekeepers. You said, well, you didn't say bygones. You said it was a long time ago. So I wanted to ask you, since it arose...
It's not at all what I said, Matthew. So,
you have the transcript.
Here's my question.
You can interpret
the transcript.
And I'd like you today, before the end of the day on your holiday, I would like you to get an answer. Of the more than 100 Sri Lankan peacekeepers known by the UN to have bought children for sex with cookies and snacks, were any of them ever prosecuted? And if they weren't, why is it that DPKO has continued to deploy Sri Lankan soldiers to the 3 missions you mentioned yesterday, and I believe they're on tap for Mali?
I don't think they've continued to deploy it. As you know, there was no deployment of Sri Lankan peacekeepers for a long time. The issue of impunity of peacekeepers who committed horrendous crimes, who violated the trust given to them, and were not persecuted, is one of the reasons, and one of the many reasons, this Secretary General and his predecessor have pushed for greater accountability and have pushed for greater partnership for member states. And member states have not always given us the information we needed. So I would urge you to check with the Sri Lankans. Yes.
But I guess I'm asking you, as the UN that deploys this troop-contributing country, of the 100, this was in the AP story yesterday, child sex ring. So it seems like it's important to say, was anyone...
Of course, everyone is vetted, and the troop contributors have a responsibility to certify that none of the soldiers that are being deployed from wherever they come from have ever been implicated in any sexual abuse, and we would expect Sri Lanka and all other troop contributors to do the same.
But they don't accept the charge, so they don't accept that they're implicated.
I want to ask you about the future of your namesake, the Mistura. Last week I asked you about this, and you said that for the longest time, or for a long time, for quite a long time, he said that he was, I'm paraphrasing here, I don't remember the exact word, but he said that he was, he wanted to move on, maybe. Something to that effect. Yesterday I asked him about it, and he indicated that he wants to stay. Since the decision is not up to him, but up to the 38th.
The Secretary General would agree with his decision. The Secretary General is very happy for Mr. de Mistura to stay. Look.
I'm curious how the the UN is involved with the situation in Venezuela now. I think the fifth or sixth protest death has now been reported. Is that something Mr. Nylander is looking into? Or
No,
his
Mr. Nylander's mandate is very much focused on the border dispute between Guyana and Venezuela, and that's his lane, so to speak. We're obviously watching the situation in Venezuela with concern. Nizar.
Yeah, now on Hodeida, 3 ships or 3 merchant vessels have been turned back. Is there any update about how the mechanism is working, about whether the Hodeida seaport is still receiving any commercial goods?
I haven't had an update from Hodeida in a while. I will see what I can get you. Mr. Lee.
Sure. First, since you used the word harassment, I just want to say for the record, I'd never even mentioned the name Najat Roshdi before I found that she blocked me. So I believe that she blocked me because she's a Moroccan official that doesn't like the coverage of Western Sahara.
That's your interpretation.
Well, I'd never mentioned her. I'd never even heard of her, by the way.
So
whatever. So you can say what you will. I wanted to ask you about this
That's
gender policy that the memo was obtained and published yesterday by Inner City Press. Maybe that's harassment as well. What's the status of Mr. Guterres' proposal? Many in the staff union, looking at the document labeled confidential, say it violates the UN Charter in that it takes merit and takes an entire part of the UN and precludes them from promotion or even lateral movement. So I heard there was a management meeting yesterday about it. What is the status of the proposal, and can you say why the proposal, as printed, written, and now published, doesn't violate the UN Charter?
First of all, I don't know what you got your hands on or what the veracity of the document is. The Secretary General has made it extremely clear from day one of his wish for greater gender parity and for a commitment to gender parity, whether it's in senior post or throughout the system. There are discussions underway to ensure that goes ahead. Discussions within the system, between various parts of the system, and in a way that obviously honors the Charter, honors the need to recognize people for the work that they do, and recognize the need for greater gender parity.
Okay, so just the document is called System-Wide Strategy on
It's
Gender
not
Parity,
a final. I mean,
produced by the Gender Parity Task Force, and it's 31 pages long.
Matthew,
so.
It's not a finalized document. You've taken something out of the oven that's not completely baked. I think everything, whether you eat it or read it, should be judged once it's completed. I've just given you the context.
Okay, because I guess my thing is that if it's his proposal and people in the staff union are saying it violates the Charter, it seems
but
like
I
a good
think
time.
People are eating a cake that's not fully baked, and they're reading documents that are not fully done.
Are they being consulted?
Consultations are being had throughout the system.
And on the resident coordinator proposal, the proposal, as I understand it, for the resident coordinator system to be moved from UNDP to the Secretariat, I wanted to know. Firhan, I think in one of your absences, said, when it's decided and approved, we'll justify it. It seems like there are many even member states concerned about it, but also there's people impacted by UNDP that would like to know what's the rationale for the proposal, and has Occam Steiner, the nominee for UNDP, signed off on this loss of power by UNDP?
First of all, again, I think I will refer you to the last analogy I gave you. There is, as the Secretary General said he would do, a review of the UN development system that is ongoing and that is being consulted, being led by the Deputy Secretary General. Once we have something to announce, we will. But obviously everyone who's needed to be consulted is being consulted. As for who the next head of UNDP will be, that is something that will be announced in due course when all the T's have been crossed and all the I's have been dotted.
If the commitment to gender is, as you said in answer to the question about the stated policy, how would that be consistent with the head of peacekeeping being a male and the head of UNDP being a male? How would that be consistent?
I think one has to look holistically at the system.
Yeah, hi.
Ben, welcome back.
Was the Secretary General disappointed about the 8th veto from Russia on the question of Syria yesterday?
I think the Secretary General would have liked to have seen unity on the Security Council. We have seen the Security Council for too long not being able to speak in one voice, especially when it comes to Syria. The Council has expressed itself. The resolution was not adopted. I think on the issue of chemical weapons, it's important that all the parties to the conflict, regardless of the fact the resolution was not adopted, fulfill their responsibilities in accordance with the relevant Security Council resolutions, which a number of them were 2118, 2335, and also that all relevant authorities cooperate with the OPCW. These are.
Given that this incident of Deir Zur, where hundreds of people have been killed, happened more than 8 hours ago, do we expect any statement today from the
I think we will we'll continue to look at the situation.
Another question, is the SG meeting Mr. Tillerson? Are there any arrangements?
Obviously, I know Mr. Tillerson will be here on, I think, from what I heard from Ambassador Haley, I think 28th of April. We'll see what the schedules are, but obviously, the Secretary General will welcome a meeting with the Secretary of State.
Any meetings with Mr. Trump as well?
When we have something to announce, we shall. Mr. Avni. Okay.
I wanted to ask on Zambia. Yesterday, you'd said you'd come back with the statement that the UN can't verify the facts, but is concerned about due process. So I wanted to ask you, now the lawyers for the opposition leader, in particular his lawyer Jack Mwimbu, has said publicly that he's being blocked from seeing his client. Was this, since there seem to be some issues with the UN
I
due
think
process,
I would reiterate what I said yesterday.